So I go sit down with Clayton Christensen. He sits for a minute and he says, Dave, I'd cry myself to sleep at night if I thought you were going to work until retirement at Oracle. So when I was at business school, I was class of 2000 in business school, everything was going crazy. Like that was the first kind of dot-com boom. I had classmates dropping out in 1999 to go found their own companies and chase these kind of, internet companies that were chasing clicks and eyeballs and even going public before they had any revenue. I just couldn't get my arms around that as kind of a speculative business model. But I did want to do something in this new economy. We had like a club at Harvard called the High Tech and New Media Club. I was involved in that. I literally founded a company while I was at HBS. We got funding for it. We took funding for it. We would leave campus and go to our venture funders office. We'd recruited a engineering team out of Duke. They had dropped out of school to move to Boston to go run this thing. We didn't get it off the ground before we had funded competitors, and we decided that wasn't going to kind of be our ticket. So we shut that down. We started another one. We couldn't get that one to go. Literally in 2000, there was like this big moment in April of 2000 where the whole dot-com bubble just burst. We were literally in full partner meetings with name brand investors, but they were too worried about triaging their portfolio to worry about kind of bringing on a new company. So that one kind of dissipated. And then I went and joined a company called Profit Logic. I was, I think, employee 15 or so. And we went and built this kind of hosted machine learning platform for optimizing retail prices. So it was a very enterprisey thing. Our customers were like Macy's and JCPenney and Bloomingdale's and Abercrombie. And we built that company up to about 20 million in revenue, and we sold that company to Oracle. Okay, cool. So now I've got, at the time I have, I think, 4 kids. I'm working at Oracle. I've got a global vice president role. We're doing big deals. Like our average annual contract value is $1.2 million. These are long sales cycles, like 9 months to 12 months. Now we're selling to like Walmart and Gap, like really big contracts. And then I end up running all of the product suite for Oracle's retail portfolio. So I've got everything from warehouse management to point of sale to supply chain software, this price optimization stuff, merchandising stuff. And I'm like a global VP. And I've got now since had 2 more kids, so we got 6 kids. And I just realized this is not feeding my soul. Like it's the kind of job that people work their entire lives for. I fly front of the bus. I fly first class. I get picked up in a black car, no matter where I am in the world, and whisked off to the kind of country manager who's now going to host me and introduce me to all of her, strongest customers. And it's just, I'm worried about it. So I go sit down with one of my mentors, Clayton Christensen. I literally live in the same neighborhood as him. And I'm like, Clay, I'm trying to decide what to do. He's like, talk to me. I'm like, should I stay or should I go? Like, he's like, what would you do if you went? I'm like, well, I'd found something, like I'd start something. He's like, do you have any ideas? I'm like, I do. He sits for a minute and he says, Dave, I'd cry myself to sleep at night if I thought you were going to work until retirement at Oracle. And that was kind of like the courage that I needed. He's like, do you know what you would do? I'm like, I'm not sure, but I have some ideas. I know who I would do it with. I think I can go. He's like, go explore it and go figure it out. So from that moment on, even though I still worked at Oracle, I was looking for what the next thing would be. What I ended up doing is partnering with a guy named Tag Romney. That's Mitt Romney's son. He was working with someone who had built the fundraising platform for Mitt Romney's gubernatorial campaign, and now they were working on the presidential campaign. And Tag believed that fundraising platform could be expanded beyond political fundraising into nonprofit fundraising, and he needed a CEO. And it was a tiny little group of people, like 4 or 5 people. So I quit Oracle um, to go be the CEO of like a 5-person company. And what I quickly learned is nothing I had learned at Oracle applied, like nothing. A little bit of what I had learned at Profit Logic applied because, raising money and building a company from scratch and coming up with marketing and positioning, but nothing I had learned at Oracle applied. Whereas my average contract value at Oracle was $1.2 million, my average contract value at Fundly was $1.2 thousand. And then we were using social kind of networks to kind of rally support for various causes, whether it was a political campaign or a nonprofit campaign. And Facebook was pretty new at the time. This was 2010. Facebook had started a couple of years prior. And I couldn't find kind of social engineers, like Facebook engineers in Boston. So at this point, we pick up our 6 kids and our dog. We sell our dream home in Boston. So I'm no longer going to live in Clay Christensen and Mitt Romney's neighborhood. I'm going to move to the West Coast. We're going to figure out kind of how to locate in Palo Alto, where we're going to have access to engineers who understand Facebook and Twitter and social engineering. And we do that, and we get a little house in Los Altos, California. And we start figuring out kind of how to make a $1.2 thousand per customer median business work. You can't, and spoiler alert, you can't hire a salesperson to sell a $1.2 thousand account. You're going to pay that salesperson way more than $1.2 thousand to land one account. So what you have to do is get automation in place for that $1.2 thousand account to basically sell itself. Luckily, we had some examples like Dropbox and DocuSign who had shown us that kind of self-service purchasing, even in the B2B world, was possible, but we didn't know how to do it. So we had to kind of retool everything to create your own account model. At the time, PLG as an acronym didn't exist, but self-service was kind of a concept. And so we had to figure out how to retool the whole business so that we could acquire customers for only the cost of getting their eyeballs, which might have been paid advertising, but we did a lot of unpaid kind of earned media as well, a lot of SEO to get people in the front door. And then we had to really optimize that funnel so that we could acquire them as a customer, activate their Fundly account, get them a merchant processing account with zero friction, then get them fundraising immediately out of the gates. And then when we would make money, our cash register would ring as funds started flowing into their campaigns. And most of those campaigns raised almost nothing. A bunch of them raised kind of like $1,000. And then some of them would raise, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And our political campaigns would raise millions of dollars. So we had to figure out how to kind of retool that entire thing. In the meantime, we're watching kind of the best future PLG companies and how they're building. And we figured it out. We figured out how to get our cost of acquisition more than paid for by the lifetime value of the new customer. And we ended up shutting down a lot of the enterprise side of the business and leaning into the velocity side of the business. It was so interesting when I sat down with Clay and we had that conversation. That wasn't our last conversation. He then said, "You know what? You didn't take my class when you were at HBS, right?" I was like, "No, you were on sabbatical. You were touring Innovator's Dilemma." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's right." He's like, "Well, why don't you come audit my class? Why don't you come sit in the classroom? I know you're flying all over the world, but maybe you can make most of the classes. You can read the cases. You can sit in my class, and then maybe we can figure something out to do together." I was like, "Oh, super honored." I would literally fly back early from a trip to Croatia or a trip to London or a trip to Japan just to be in Clay's class because it was so interesting. And my mind was totally open. I knew kind of the disruptive innovation framework, but I didn't know his other frameworks. I didn't know the job to be done framework. I didn't know the open versus closed systems framework. He's got a bunch of really interesting stuff that I hadn't, and I started reading my way through all of his books as well. Okay, so on the tail end of that, he invites me to think with him about founding a venture fund. And so friends of mine are like, "Oh my gosh, if you do that with Clay, you you'll have it made. Meantime, Tag has approached me and is asking me to spin this piece of technology out of his dad's campaign, which at the time is called Blue Swarm. I think it's a reference to all the blue suits swarming like the candidate after the candidate gets done making a speech. Very, very political, a little distasteful because I'm not like a politics guy. But the vision to take it into nonprofit was really interesting because that's a giant market. Did I have a framework for figuring out one versus the other? Not really, because I had a third option. The venture fund that had funded Profit Logic, which we sold to Oracle, was General Catalyst, and they had a really hot company that they had just invested in called HubSpot. And because I knew all the guys at General Catalyst, it would have been easy for me to say, "Hey, can you introduce me into HubSpot?" In fact, I think I did ask them that. I just didn't follow up on it. Those are three like amazing opportunities. Like, so how do you choose? Did I choose right? I would say there's a revisionist history way to say, of course you chose right. Like you moved to Silicon Valley, you figured out how to raise money, you figured out how to build a company from scratch, you figured out how to make unit economics work, and you developed some expertise in network and PLG. Okay, amazing. So that's kind of where I am today. But what would have happened if I had partnered with Clay? I bet it would have also been amazing. And what would have happened if I'd been an early employee at HubSpot? Also would have been amazing. So I've just learned to not look back because everything looks like it could have been amazing, and I just want to look forward. I mean, I earned some skinned knees and battle scars in the path that I took. And you could say, gosh, I wish I would have never skinned my knees or gotten any battle scars, but I'm not sure that's how you learn. So now I'm sitting in an interesting spot because I'm an investor and I'm looking for high growth companies. And I'm looking not only for a company that's posting high growth marks, but has the systems and processes in place to sustain high growth through multiple phases of growth. Like that's if I can detect the potential for growth, for the long term sustaining possibility of growth, then we'll make good investments, right? If I were founding a company right now, I would not presume that human selling is the scalable way to grow a company. I put this in the book that every single company starts out with founder-led sales. Every company. Like, I don't care if you are a straight-up engineer who is completely introverted, you will be talking to other humans to get the first customers onto your platform. They might be your best friends, your roommates, your relatives, your neighbors. They might be in your circle of developers. They might be people you find online. But you are going to be talking to people, and you're going to be learning about what's working and what's not working. That's great. But then when it comes to the decision of how am I going to scale this, I would presume, and it's even more true today than when I published Freemium, that systems can make my product discoverable and adaptable without a human involved. In the PLG world, it's just, it's like create your account, activate your account, achieve first impact, monetize at a certain point when you get to the point where you've maxed out whatever the free version is, and then work on renewal and expansion and growth loops. Okay, amazing. All of those mechanics are still the same, but AI can help me at every single one of those stages. So when as a customer, I'm looking at a possible product, I mean, I often go into AI to just ask it, like, what are the use cases? What is the compatibility? How would I get started on this? And in the best cases of AI native companies, they actually build all those workflows in, and they build that agentic help in so that I can just literally kind of start my journey using AI assistance all the way through each one of those stages. And then they're in the background collecting all the data to see what's working and what's not working, and they're optimizing. So the very best, if I were starting a company today, I would just assume as a default that AI and systems can do every single piece of my go-to-market motion. And I'd have to be proven wrong before I would hire a human and pay her a salary, take her through some sort of an onboarding journey and training journey, and then let her kind of break her pick on the rocks of market creation until she can figure it out. Now, there's a hybrid. The bigger price tag and the bigger customers you're selling into, the more enterprise concerns there are. You've got to navigate politics. You've got to navigate infosec. You got to navigate legal. But if I were building right now, I would assume that most of that is solvable with AI, and I'd put humans in to manage the exceptional, not the predictable. one of the really enticing things about a sales-led model is that you can literally sell what we used to call slideware. You're literally just selling a framework, you're selling the future. And then once they give you money, you start building it. Literally at ProfitLogic, I sold a $20 million deal. I pitched 20 million. We closed for 6.5 million. So I sold a $6.5 million deal for software that didn't exist. Amazing, right? Okay, great. Now we got $6.5 million. No, it's actually really hard. Once you get that $6.5 million, then you got to go build it to their spec. Then you got to get them to agree that it's built in a way that they're willing to kind of release the next block of funds. And then you got to worry about whether it's going to be applicable to more than just that first customer, whether you've actually built for the market or not. It is difficult. I could tell you, like, it is way more difficult than you think when you're collecting that first money. So that's attractive, but it also has its downsides. On the other hand, what if I'm just building something that's free and I get no money? Well, that sucks. Like, how do I pay myself? Luckily, I don't necessarily have to hire a big team anymore because I can get so much leverage through agentic coding tools that I can just iterate my way through. Like, if I can survive on ramen for a few months, I could probably run lots of iterations until I get at least some piece of that right. I'll at least know that whether it works or not if I'm running iterations fast enough. But I do have to figure out how to stay alive during that time. The good news, though, is if I'm developing for the market and I'm developing for kind of the average customer and I'm getting tens of customers through to test, maybe hundreds of customers through to test, I'm going to know that I have something sustainable on the back end of that. And then when I do turn funding on, it'll trickle in, but that's a solid kind of base of business and customers that I can build on, and a solid set of understanding. I'm not worried about whether I built for the market because I did build for the market. Do I raise seed funds? Do I go to an accelerator? Do I try to get into Y Combinator? Maybe if I need to, pay to stay alive. Can I do something like that through my university? Is there something local that could help me? Are there angels that could get me money to feed me and two other people while we're doing that? Those are all options. I can take money on a relatively kind of non-dilutive basis, just, like a safe, but it takes a leap of faith. What I'm trying to do is develop empathy for the end user, really understanding her job to be done, generosity. Oh, that's what you're trying to accomplish. Here, take this, see if it works. And then metrics that tell me whether she is actually getting the impact from that solution that I thought she was going to get, or whether she's trying and then bailing. That framework, empathy, generosity, and metrics, is going to give me the basis for rapid iteration until I get it right. And the faster I get it right, the faster I get money flowing. The faster I get money flowing, the faster I can get off of my ramen diet. It almost seems obvious that planning and building a business from a kind of self-service first or agentic first or AI first standpoint makes sense because we're in 2026. But from my seat as an investor, I see a lot of companies, because we don't get involved until you're at 10 million in revenue and doubling year over year. So a lot of times it takes a while to get to 10 million in revenue. And a lot of times the companies that get to 10 million in revenue are led by someone in their, heaven forbid, 40s. And they may not have started building in that way. Like, I just looked at a company who, to their credit, are 10 million in revenue and doubling year over year. That's an amazing company, right? But when I looked at their future plans for what they were going to do with our $30 million check, what they were going to do is hire salespeople who carry quotas so that they can take that 10 million and turn it into 20 million based on those salespeople doing a really good job at selling. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing today. So if I were to rewind that founder back, retrofitting, by the way, is possible. Like, that founder can retrofit some self-service into his business. It takes work, though. But if I were to rewind back, and so now I'm in my dorm room, I'm in my living room, I'm in my garage, I'm in my co-working space, and I'm trying to build a company, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to work on a self-service basis. Even though I have AI working for me, the exact frameworks that are listed out in Freemium still apply. I still need to designate what the steps are on the journey: acquisition, activation, first impact, monetization, renewal, expansion. I still want to measure those. Whether I have a robot helping my customer at each step or whether it's just a web form, doesn't matter. In fact, I might even have human assist. It doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to do is get customers as quickly to first impact as possible and as quickly and reliably to recurring impact as possible so that I can monetize that customer reliably and count on her being a multi-year customer, use her advocacy to go get more customers, and just build that flywheel. The way I do that is I just get a certain amount of volume into the system so that I can see what's working and what's not. I'm going to iterate until I get it flowing smoothly. As soon as I get that part of the journey flowing smoothly, I'm going to go iterate on the next one. As soon as that's flowing smoothly, I'll go iterate on the next one. And because I'm doing this all programmatically, I don't have to worry about like human retention or human execution precision. It's not like I'm hiring a customer success manager and I'm hoping that when I check back in with her a week later, she's still doing it the way that I taught her. No, I'm literally figuring out what works by iterating, programming it in so that that stage is going to be executed within boundaries that I've set the same way every single time. And then I'll go fix the next piece, and then I'll go fix the next piece. And the great thing about that is once it's programmed in, the machine doesn't forget. The machine doesn't get tired. The machine scales. I can work on a certain part of the machinery while I just count on the rest of the machinery working. So in our world, that's a very solvable problem. Does it mean that I never have to talk to a human? Of course not. Like I'll look at the logs to see what's working and what's not. But if I want to understand why it's not working, I need to go talk to that human. I need to understand what she was experiencing at that point so that I can develop empathy for how she was experiencing that step in the onboarding. And I can contextualize what I'm putting into the new design. But it's iteration. It's the same kind of principles, just accelerated through AI. And I just assume that systemization is my means to scaling, with human intervention being the exception, not the rule.